I never thought I'd be standing in a cemetery at 32, watching them lower my wife into the ground. My name is Michael, and I'm a software engineer living just outside Denver. Most days I write code and fix computer problems for a company downtown. It's boring work, but it used to pay the bills and give me something to do during the day. Right now, though, none of that matters. Nothing matters anymore. Sarah was everything to me. We met at a birthday party when we were in our early 20s. I remember she was wearing a blue dress and laughing at something her friend said. When she smiled at me from across the room, I felt my stomach flip. We talked for hours that night about music, about our favorite foods, about the places we wanted to see someday. She told me she'd always wanted to hike through the mountains of Switzerland. I told her I'd take her there. 3 years later, we got married in a small church with just our families and closest friends. We made so many plans together. We wanted to backpack through Europe, buy a little farmhouse in the mountains, and have at least 2 kids. We'd stay up late talking about what we'd name them and what kind of parents we'd be. But then everything fell apart. Sarah got sick 3 years after our wedding. The doctors used big words I didn't understand at first. Cancer. Stage 3. Aggressive. They said they'd try treatment, and we believed them. I went with her to every single appointment. I held her hand when the nurses put the needles in her arm for chemotherapy. I stayed awake with her on the nights when the medicine made her throw up so badly she couldn't stop shaking. Some weeks were better than others. Her hair would start growing back a little, and we'd celebrate by making pancakes for breakfast or walking to the park near our apartment. During those good days, we could almost forget she was sick. We'd watch movies and argue about which actor was better. We'd cook dinner together, and she'd tease me about burning the garlic bread. Those moments felt normal, like we were just a regular married couple with our whole lives ahead of us. But the good weeks got shorter and harder to find. Sarah started losing weight. Her face got thinner, and the dark circles under her eyes got deeper. She'd sleep for hours and still wake up tired. Our talks about the future changed. Instead of planning trips to Europe, we planned which hospital to visit next. Instead of talking about baby names, we talked about which medicines helped with the pain. I watched the woman I loved disappear a little more each day, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I'll never forget our last real conversation. She was in the hospital bed with tubes running into her arms and machines beeping all around her. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean close to hear her. She reached for my hand, her fingers cold and thin, and she said, "I'm so grateful for every moment we had together." I told her not to talk like that she was going to get better, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew. We both knew. 3 days later, she was gone. The nurse called me early in the morning. The sky was still dark outside. She just said, "I'm so sorry, Michael." Sarah passed away peacefully. I couldn't even answer her. I sat on the edge of our bed staring at the wall, feeling like someone had reached inside my chest and ripped my heart out. The funeral happened on a Thursday. I stood there in a black suit I'd borrowed from my brother, watching people I hadn't seen in years walk past Sarah's casket. Everyone kept hugging me and saying they were sorry. Some people cried. Others just squeezed my shoulder and walked away. I felt numb, like I was watching everything happen to someone else. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere far away. I kept thinking this couldn't be real. Any minute now, I'd wake up and Sarah would be next to me in bed, complaining about my alarm clock going off too early. That's when Jennifer walked up to me. She's Sarah's younger sister, and I'd always liked her. She and Sarah used to call each other almost every day. I knew she was hurting too. Her eyes were red from crying, and her hands were shaking when she touched my arm. I expected her to say what everyone else had said. "I'm so sorry for your loss." But instead, she looked right at me with this strange expression I couldn't read. She took a deep breath and said, "She didn't want you to be alone." She made me promise to make sure of that. I didn't know what to say. The words hung in the air between us, confusing and heavy. What did that even mean? I just nodded because I couldn't form words. My throat felt tight, and my eyes burned. Jennifer squeezed my arm once more and then walked away to join the rest of her family. I stood there alone, her words repeating in my head. Sarah had known this was coming. She'd made plans for after she was gone. She'd thought about me being alone in our apartment with all her stuff still there. The thought made me feel sick. I didn't want anyone taking care of me. I didn't want comfort or company. All I wanted was my wife back, and that was the one thing I could never have. Walking into our apartment after the funeral felt wrong. The key turned in the lock the same way it always had, but everything else was different. The living room looked exactly like it did the morning Sarah went to the hospital for the last time. Her reading glasses sat on the coffee table next to a book she'd been halfway through. Her favorite gray sweater hung over the back of the armchair where she always curled up to watch TV. On the kitchen counter, there was still a coffee mug with her lipstick stain on the rim. I picked it up and stared at it for a long time, then put it back down exactly where it had been. Moving anything felt like erasing her. That first night alone was the worst. I sat on the couch until it got dark outside, not bothering to turn on any lights. The silence was so thick it felt like it was pressing down on me from all sides. I kept expecting to hear her voice calling from the bedroom or the sound of her footsteps in the hallway. But there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. I didn't cry. Couldn't. It was like all my feelings had been shut off, and I was just empty inside. Days started blending together. I'd wake up around noon, sometimes later. Most mornings I'd forget to eat breakfast. Sometimes I'd forget to eat at all. Work kept calling and leaving messages, asking when I'd be ready to come back. I deleted every voicemail without listening to the whole thing. How could I sit at a desk and type code like everything was normal? How could I answer emails and attend meetings when my entire world had just ended? I spent hours just walking from room to room in the apartment, picking things up and putting them down again. Sarah's hairbrush, her favorite coffee mug, the photo of us from our honeymoon. I couldn't throw anything away, but I also couldn't stand to look at it all. People tried to help. Friends sent text messages I didn't answer. Coworkers left voicemails I didn't listen to. My brother stopped by twice, but I pretended I wasn't home. Everyone said the same useless things. She's in a better place now. Time heals all wounds. You'll get through this. Those words meant nothing to me. They were just sounds people made because they didn't know what else to say. But there was one person who wouldn't leave me alone. Jennifer showed up at my door almost every other day. First, I hated it. She'd knock until I answered, holding bags of groceries or containers of food her mom had made. I'd mumble thanks and try to close the door, but she always found a reason to stay a few extra minutes. "Have you been eating?" she'd ask. "When's the last time you left the apartment?" I'd lie and say I was fine, that I didn't need help, but she'd just nod and say she'd check on me again soon. One evening about 2 months after the funeral, I snapped at her. She'd brought over some kind of soup and was trying to put it in my fridge. "You don't have to keep doing this," I said, my voice coming out harsher than I meant. "I can take care of myself." Jennifer stopped what she was doing and turned to look at me. Her face was calm, not angry or hurt. "I know you're not okay," she said quietly, "and that's all right. You don't have to pretend with me." Then she left without saying anything else. I stood there in my messy kitchen, surrounded by takeout containers and dirty dishes, and I felt something crack inside me. She was right. I wasn't okay. I was drowning, and I'd been too proud to admit it. After that, I stopped fighting her visits so much. Jennifer would come by, and we'd sit together without talking much. She never tried to force me into conversations or make me feel better. She just existed in the same space, making sure I wasn't completely alone. Slowly, very slowly, I started to notice that the days she came by were a little easier to get through. One evening, she showed up with 2 cups of coffee from a shop down the street. "Come on," she said. "We're going for a walk." I almost said no, but something in her eyes reminded me of Sarah. That same stubbornness, that refusal to take no for an answer. So I grabbed my jacket and followed her outside. We walked to the lake a few blocks from my apartment. It was early evening, and the sun was starting to set behind the mountains. Families were out walking their dogs. Kids were riding bikes on the path. Everyone looked so normal, so happy, and I felt completely out of place, like I didn't belong in a world where people could still smile and laugh. Jennifer walked beside me quietly for a while, not pushing me to talk. Finally, she stopped near a bench and turned to face me. "You need to stop blaming yourself," she said. I frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" She took a breath. "You act like you failed her somehow. Like if you'd been smarter or done something different, she'd still be here. But that's not true. You loved her with everything you had, and she knew that." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. She was right. I'd been carrying this guilt around for months, thinking that maybe if I'd noticed she was sick sooner, if I'd pushed the doctors harder, if I'd prayed more or fought harder, things would be different. I'd never said it out loud, but somehow Jennifer knew. "Sarah told me something before she died," Jennifer continued, her voice soft. "She said you gave her more love in your few years together than most people get in their whole lives." That's when I broke. Right there by the lake with joggers passing by and ducks swimming in the water, I covered my face with my hands and cried. Not quiet tears, but deep, painful sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed. Jennifer didn't say anything else. She just put her hand on my shoulder and let me fall apart. For the first time since Sarah died, I let someone see how completely broken I was. 7 months after I buried Sarah, my boss convinced me to come back to work. Not full-time, just 3 days a week to start. I agreed mostly because sitting in the apartment all day was driving me crazy. My first day back felt strange. Everyone at the office treated me differently, like I was made of glass and might break if they said the wrong thing. They'd give me these sad smiles in the hallway or avoid eye contact completely. During lunch, people would ask how I was doing in that careful voice that meant they didn't really want to know the truth. I'd say I was fine, and they'd nod and quickly change the subject. The routine helped though. Waking up, getting dressed, going somewhere, doing something with my hands and brain. It gave my days shape again. Jennifer kept coming around, but it felt different now. She wasn't just checking to make sure I'd eaten or that I was still breathing. We'd actually talk about things. Real things. She told me about problems at her job as a teacher. I told her about the funny emails I got from confused coworkers. We'd watch shows together and argue about which characters were the most annoying. Sounds simple, but those ordinary conversations meant more to me than I could explain. She wasn't treating me like a broken thing that needed fixing. She was just being my friend. One Saturday afternoon, Jennifer came over to help me tackle the storage closet. I'd been avoiding it for months because it was full of Sarah's stuff. Old college textbooks, boxes of holiday decorations we'd collected over the years, photo albums from trips we'd taken. We spent hours pulling everything out, creating piles of what to keep and what to donate. My hands were covered in dust, and Jennifer had a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She pulled out a shoebox and opened it, then started laughing. Inside were pictures from a camping trip Sarah and I had taken to Rocky Mountain National Park. In one photo, Sarah was trying to roast a marshmallow, but it had caught on fire and she was waving the stick around with this panicked look on her face. I remembered that moment perfectly. She'd screamed and thrown the flaming marshmallow into the fire pit, then laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. I found myself laughing too, really laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. Jennifer held up another picture. "Look at your face in this one," she said. "You look terrified." She was right. In the photo, I was ducking away from Sarah's flaming marshmallow with my eyes wide. We sat there on the closet floor surrounded by boxes, looking through the whole stack of pictures and sharing memories. Jennifer told me stories about Sarah I'd never heard before, things from when they were kids. How Sarah had convinced her to cut her own hair when they were 7, and it turned out so bad their mom cried. How Sarah had taught her to ride a bike by running alongside her for 3 hours straight until Jennifer finally got it. Then something shifted. We both reached for the same picture at the same time, and our hands touched. It was just for a second, but I felt it. That spark of something I hadn't felt since before Sarah got sick. I looked up, and Jennifer was looking right at me. Her eyes were soft and searching, and I realized we were sitting very close. Close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and light. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here, not with her, not ever. I pulled my hand back like I'd touched something hot. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, standing up so fast I almost knocked over a box. Jennifer stood up too, but she didn't look upset. "You don't need to apologize," she said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath it. Something vulnerable. "I feel it too, Michael." Those words hung between us like a live wire. I wanted to deny it, to pretend I didn't know what she meant, but I couldn't. We both knew. Something had been building between us for months, so slowly and quietly that neither of us had wanted to name it. But now it was out in the open, and I didn't know what to do with it. "I can't," I said, shaking my head. "This is wrong. You're Sarah's sister. What would people think? What would she think?" Jennifer wrapped her arms around herself. "I've been asking myself the same questions," she admitted. "But pretending we don't feel anything, that seems more wrong to me." We stood there in awkward silence, surrounded by boxes of Sarah's belongings, both of us trying to figure out what came next. Eventually, Jennifer left, and I spent the rest of the day sitting on the couch, my mind spinning. I felt guilty for even having these feelings. Sarah had been gone less than a year. How could I be thinking about someone else? How could I be thinking about her sister? But at the same time, something inside me had woken up. Something I thought had died with Sarah. The next few weeks were weird. Jennifer still came by, but we were both careful not to talk about what had happened in the storage closet. We'd have dinner together, watch TV, talk about normal stuff, but there was this tension underneath everything now. Every time our hands almost touched, every time we sat too close on the couch, I'd feel my chest tighten. One night, we were sitting on my tiny balcony drinking tea. The city lights were spread out below us, and you could just barely see the mountains in the distance. Jennifer set her mug down and asked me a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Do you think Sarah would want you to be alone forever?" I thought about this a lot, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It feels impossible to imagine her wanting me to be with someone else." Jennifer nodded slowly. "Maybe she wouldn't want you to move on," she said. "But maybe she'd want you to move forward. There's a difference." I let those words sink in. Moving forward. Not forgetting Sarah or replacing her, but continuing to live instead of just existing. "She told me something once," Jennifer continued, staring out at the lights. "She said if anything happened to her, she didn't want you shutting yourself off from the world. She made me promise I'd make sure you kept living." That's when I understood what Jennifer had meant at the funeral. Sarah hadn't just asked her sister to check on me occasionally. She'd asked her to make sure I didn't give up on life completely. And somewhere along the way, while Jennifer was keeping that promise, something unexpected had grown between us. I reached over and took Jennifer's hand. She looked at me surprised. "I'm scared," I told her. "Scared of what this means. Scared of what people will say. Scared of feeling happy again." She squeezed my hand. "Me too," she whispered. "But maybe that's okay." 15 months after Sarah's death, I woke up one day and realized my apartment didn't feel like a tomb anymore. Jennifer's shoes were by the door next to mine. Her jacket hung on the hook in the hallway. The coffee maker was set to brew at 6:30 because she liked to drink coffee before I even opened my eyes. These small changes had happened so gradually I barely noticed them, but together they meant something big. My life was different now. Not better or worse than before, just different. Jennifer and I never had one big conversation where we decided to be together. It just happened piece by piece, day by day. She'd stay over after dinner, then she'd stay over on weekends. Then one day I realized she hadn't gone back to her own apartment in 2 weeks. We both struggled with guilt. Sometimes I'd catch myself laughing at something Jennifer said, and then I'd feel terrible, like I was betraying Sarah's memory. Jennifer felt it too. Once, she told me she'd gone to visit Sarah's grave and apologized for falling in love with me. We cried together that night, holding each other and trying to figure out how to be happy without feeling like we were doing something wrong. But slowly, we learned that loving someone new doesn't erase the person you lost. Your heart doesn't work like that. It just makes room for more. Then one evening, Jennifer asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. She looked nervous, playing with her hands the way she did when something was bothering her. "I need to tell you something," she said. My stomach dropped. I immediately thought the worst. She was leaving me. She'd decided this was too complicated. But instead, she took a deep breath and said, "I'm pregnant." The words didn't register at first. I just stared at her, my brain trying to process what she'd said. Pregnant. A baby. Our baby. Are you sure? I finally asked, which was a stupid question because of course she was sure. She nodded, tears starting to fill her eyes. I took 3 tests. I have a doctor's appointment next week. Panic hit me like a wave. 1,000 thoughts rushed through my head all at once. We weren't even married. What would Sarah's parents think? What would my family say? How could we raise a baby when we were still figuring out our own relationship? "Michael, say something," Jennifer whispered. She looked terrified, like she thought I might run away. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Finally, I managed to ask, "What do you want to do?" Her face crumpled. "I want to keep it. I want us to do this together. But I need to know if you're in or if I'm doing this alone." I looked at her sitting across from me, this woman who had pulled me out of the darkest place I'd ever been, who had shown up day after day when I'd pushed everyone else away, who had loved me even when I was too broken to love myself. And I realized the fear I felt wasn't about the baby or what people would think. It was about daring to hope again, about letting myself believe in a future when the last future I'd planned had been ripped away from me. I stood up, walked around the table, and took both her hands in mine. "We're doing this together," I said. "I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm all in." The pregnancy brought a new kind of purpose into our lives. We spent weekends at baby stores, overwhelmed by how many different kinds of bottles and car seats existed. Jennifer would drag me to parenting classes where we sat in a circle with other couples and learned how to change diapers on plastic dolls. It felt surreal and normal at the same time. We argued about whether to paint the nursery yellow or green. We made lists of possible names and crossed them off and added new ones. My apartment, which had felt so empty and sad for so long, slowly transformed into a home. We hung up pictures. We bought a bigger couch. We made space for a whole new life. But I still talked to Sarah sometimes, usually late at night when Jennifer was asleep. I'd sit by the window and tell her about what was happening, about the baby coming, about how scared I was, about how much I still missed her. I told her I hoped she'd understand, that I wasn't trying to forget her or act like she never existed. I was just trying to keep living like she'd wanted me to. One night, about a week before the baby was due, I told Sarah that if we had a boy, we wanted to name him after her. Samuel, from Sarah. I wanted our child to carry a piece of her with him always. The day Jennifer went into labor, I was a complete mess. We rushed to the hospital at 3 in the morning, and I held her hand through 12 hours of pain and pushing and nurses running in and out. When they finally placed our son in my arms, this tiny perfect person with Sarah's nose and Jennifer's chin, something inside me healed that I didn't even know was still broken. I looked at Jennifer, exhausted and crying and more beautiful than I'd ever seen her, and I felt grateful, not just for this moment, but for every moment that had led here. The good ones and the terrible ones and everything in between. "What should we call him?" Jennifer asked softly. My voice cracked when I answered. "Samuel. We'll call him Samuel after Sarah." Jennifer's eyes filled with fresh tears, and she nodded. That night, alone with my son while Jennifer slept, I held him close and whispered, "Your name comes from someone very special, someone who loved me enough to make sure I wouldn't be alone. You'll never meet her, but you'll know her story. You'll know how much she was loved." Jennifer and I never got married. We didn't need a ceremony or a piece of paper to prove what we had was real. We built a life together, messy and complicated and nothing like either of us had planned. People talked, of course. Some of Sarah's relatives stopped speaking to us. Some friends didn't understand how we could be together, but others did. My brother told me Sarah would have wanted me to be happy. Jennifer's mom said she saw the way we took care of each other, and that's all that mattered to her. Now, when I watch Samuel play with his toy cars on the living room floor, I think about all the different kinds of love that exist in this world. The love I had for Sarah, fierce and bright and cut short too soon. The love I have for Jennifer, quieter but just as deep, built on shared grief and understanding. And the love I have for my son, overwhelming and protective and unlike anything I'd ever felt before. These loves don't compete with each other. They exist together, woven into the fabric of who I am. Moving forward didn't mean leaving Sarah behind. It meant carrying her with me into whatever came next. And every time I say my son's name, I remember both the woman I lost and the life I was brave enough to build afterward.